Viewfinder is a puzzle game released in 2023 by Sad Owl Studios. The game's central mechanic revolves around photography. During the game, you take photos and then place these photos into the world. It's an impressive mechanic which is seamlessly implemented. This mechanic leads to some incredibly freeform puzzles. You're completely free with what you take a picture of and where you place it. This results in many puzzles having a ton of possible solutions, although it also means that a lot of the puzzles are quite easy to solve. Most of the harder puzzles have to limit your camera use to remain challenging. This is achieved by taking away your camera entirely, or by limiting the amount of film you have access to. Most of the game's mechanics also revolve around photography. Viewfinder is a game about choosing what to take photos of and where to place those photos. Placing and orienting photographs is easy, and it's intuitive exactly how much space a photo will take up. Placing a photo is destructive. Whatever was in the world is replaced by the contents of the photo. Thankfully, the game also features the ability to rewind time whenever you want. This is a much needed feature as it's easy to softlock puzzles, either destroying important parts of the level or wasting a photo in the wrong place. Each level is entirely self-contained, requiring you to reach and power a teleporter to progress to the next. Although there are some slightly larger levels, it's rare for a level to contain more than a couple of puzzles. In addition to the main camera mechanic, there are a variety of other mechanics. These usually show up in a new set of levels, are explored for a while, and then rarely if ever show up again. One mechanic adds frames which put a filter over the world when you walk through them. Terrain in these levels is made from patterns which are rendered invisible by certain filters, causing them to disappear. Another mechanic uses non-Euclidean geometry. This kind of mind-bending geometry has been seen before in games like Antechamber and Superliminal, but the camera is used in interesting ways. I did find this mechanic to be a little unpredictable, often requiring some trial and error. There's a ton of other mechanics in this game. Unfortunately, few of them are fully explored. With most mechanics, you get a few levels teaching them, then maybe a puzzle or two before they're discarded. It's rare for mechanics to show up again, and they're almost never combined with other mechanics in interesting ways. There are some mechanics which do get reused. An example is a set of levels focusing around purple objects, which do not show up in photos. This mechanic then gets reused regularly throughout the rest of the game. Viewfinder is a short game, and it feels like it tries to cram too much into that playtime. It could do with either being longer or focusing on a smaller set of mechanics. Viewfinder is also an easy game. Even the optional challenges rarely pose difficult problems. The game feels like a collection of cool ideas that don't really come together. The individual ideas are great and enjoyable to mess around with, but they're never given the room to reach their full potential. Viewfinder has a clean and polished look. Placing new terrain using photos is impressive visually, and throughout the game you unlock filters to vary how things look. The game has a ton of character and charm, and really nails the art style they were going for. This is most clearly seen in the UI. Everything in the UI is camera themed. The dialogues are SD cards, the save slots are rolls of film, and the menu design is inspired by digital cameras. The artists did a fantastic job. The visuals often combine with the music to create a meditative ambience. The music is minimalistic. Sometimes a sound effect will play in response to you making progress, but otherwise it's gently in the background. Where music and visuals do take on more character is during the hubs. The game never asks you to explore the hubs, but they're some of the more visually interesting parts of the game. The music in the hubs is less subdued and moves more to the forefront. The hubs create a strong atmosphere that pulled me into the world. Story-wise, the world of the game is a simulation by a team of scientists trying to create a machine to solve climate change. Your character's motivation is to explore this simulation to try to find the machine they built. The game doesn't say much about global warming, it's more of a plot device. The interesting part is the world itself, which is torn between being an experimental simulation and an art piece. The gameplay and story don't really mesh. Having to solve puzzles to find a weather machine feels a little contrived. There's a train that takes you between the hubs in order, but you're never given a reason why you can't just skip straight to the end. Although the story appears to be about climate change, it's more about the scientists who built the simulation. The rest of this section is going to include some spoilers. To avoid these, skip to the time shown on screen now. Ultimately, the experiment was a failure. The weather machine never worked. This is a bit of a predictable outcome. There'd be no global warming in the present if it was already solved in the past. At this point, the game reveals what it's actually about with the line, "It's meaningful, but not in the way you want." The central question asked by Viewfinder is whether the work of these scientists is worthless, or whether the world they created has value in of itself. Does the world have value as art, even though it ultimately failed to achieve its purpose? It's an interesting question. Audio logs reveal that most of the scientists abandoned the project, with only one holding on, unable to let go of their failure. On the other hand, Kate, the character who's showing you around the world, clearly thinks the world the scientists have created is a work of art. Whatever side you fall on, there's some cruel irony in the end, as the only way to get out of the simulation ends up being to destroy it. Even if the world had artistic value, it's gone now. I'm not going to go any deeper into this idea here. Viewfinder is well written, and while the story and gameplay don't always fit together, it still has some interesting ideas. Despite the main climate change plot falling a bit flat for me, I still felt like the game manages to say a lot in its short runtime. Overall, Viewfinder is an interesting game with some fresh ideas. The core mechanic is impressive and executed well, but some of the side mechanics don't feel fully fleshed out. The game is a little too easy, with none of the puzzles feeling particularly taxing. The main issue with the game is the length. The game took me 4.5 hours to complete. With a price tag of $25 or £20, I can understand why you might want to wait for a sale. It's common for puzzle games to be short, but I do think Viewfinder in particular could do with some extra length. If the game was a couple of hours longer, each of the mechanics could be given more time to breathe. As it is, several of them feel underexplored. If you can stomach the price or find it on sale, I do recommend Viewfinder. Despite its flaws, it kept me entertained for the duration, and the story does have some depth. The core mechanic is impressive, and even after the novelty wears off, the game is not short on good ideas. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. Thanks for watching, I'll see you all next time.